Welcome everybody here. We've got a good presentation here for you today. Thanks everybody for attending. Today we're going to talk about some of the pre-erection planning tools from SDS2, kind of how you can use those things to your advantage, get ahead of schedule. We've got a special guest here with us today that's going to give us a little bit of a case study and how they have implemented some of these tools. So my name's David Zabka. I've been here with SDS2 for just over 16 years now, done everything from support to managing that department, involved with some development projects, and now I've been in sales for about 4 to 5 years. And with me here today, we have Michael Tomlin. He's a project manager with Cooper Steel. Michael, you want to give us a little introduction and a little background on yourself?
Yes. I recently got hired on with Cooper Steel last year. In February of 2021 was my start date here. I worked for our family business for 10 years before I came to Cooper Steel, and I've done a lot within working, for them those 10 years. And I did all of our estimating, detailing, CNC programming, project management. Pretty much everything from start to finish. And also I completed the SDS2 training at your office in Lincoln back in 2015. And my role here is ensuring the timely and cost-effective completion of projects by overseeing all phases from start to finish.
Very good. So sounds like you've done a little bit of everything involved. Yep. With detailing, fabrication, project management. Kind of got experience through the whole process. Then that's good. That's good to know. So. And we're happy to have you here today. Appreciate everything. So
yeah, thank you for having me today.
So little agenda here. Obviously, introduced ourselves here. Give you a little background and information on Cooper Steel. We'll talk about SDS2 Load Planning. We'll talk about SDS2 Site Planning. We're going to give you a bit of a case study on a project recently completed by Cooper Steel that they've used both of those SDS2 tools on. It was a university campus building. So let's hop right into it. Cooper Steel. And Michael, why don't you go ahead and give us the rundown on Cooper Steel here?
Yes. The company started by our founder, Kenneth Cooper, back in 1960 and has continued to grow tremendously over the past 60 years. And we were a national leader in steel fab and erect, and have set and exceeded the standard for the steel fabrication, erection, project management, detailing, and estimating parts of this industry. Our core values include our excellence, responsibility and ownership, the charity events and things we do within the community here, the innovation. We're continuously, looking for ways to make jobs more efficient and move a lot faster based on a lot of the schedule demands that we have nowadays. Partnerships within our general contractors, and our most important value is family here within this company. Our current mission is to deliver top quality solutions for each customer that is sustainable and efficient and profitable to them, and also for the growth of our company. We're passionate about what we do and how we do it, and motivated to do things the right way every time. And we lead with our values at our core and aim to be the nation's leading fabricator and erector.
Very good, very good. So it sounds like I love to hear the, continuous innovation and always looking for new ways and better ways of doing things. So a lot of times it's easy to get stagnant, especially when you always hear that that term people say, and it makes me cringe a lot of times that, oh, well, it's worked that way for the last 40 years, and that's why we do it. And it's, well,
Yeah.
in some cases that's fine, that's true, that's great. Other cases you got to stop and say, well, okay, yeah, we've been doing it for 40 years, but is that really the best way? So I always love to talk to people about innovation and how they can get better in that. So glad to hear you guys are on that side of things there. So
I mean, well, you have to be in order to be successful. I mean, everything's constantly evolving, and you have to learn more. I mean, I learn more every day. So, I mean, you have to have that mindset in this industry.
Yep, absolutely. I agree 100%. So let's talk about some of the problems that Cooper Steel experienced or foresaw with this university campus project that we'll discuss as we go here. Give me a little bit of information. So obviously, first bullet point we have there is a limited laydown area. Can you give me a little more info on that problem and what you guys were looking to solve there?
Yes, I mean, with this particular project here on campus, as you can see from the overhead view from the crane operator, that he made that picture for me and sent it to me because we were trying to show the general contractor, because they were asking why we couldn't bring more trucks and unload more steel. And as you can see in that picture here, there's not a lot of room. So instead of having everything pile up on the job site, we chose to try to find a better way to get the material there, know where to stage it, to where the erector can find it a little easier instead of having to shuffle stuff around and stacks material on top of one another, which, I mean, can also prevent, lead to injury if something was to fall over or what have you. So using, that was one of the problems we faced, and also the logistics of trucking through downtown Nashville, and we were limited to the hours we had to unload and offload, because on this particular project we were still dealing with the students accessing their particular classrooms. So I mean, it was still, like, college was still in session during this time frame, so having to work with campus police, I mean, there was a lot there that, we had to work around.
So you probably had to deliver outside of normal class hours or something like that, I imagine.
Yeah, the hours we had were 7 in the morning to 11 a.m. and because there's a cafeteria in the building next to this job site, so it was always, I mean, students were walking up and down the sidewalks continuously, so there was no, we had to make sure that none of them got anywhere around as we were offloading. And of course, I mean, the campus put up signs, saying not to go this way for that day, but those, as you probably can tell, got ignored.
I was a college student once, and I know I didn't pay much attention to signage or anything for that matter. So I get it.
Yeah.
Okay. So last bullet point there, kind of the backwards problem solving. So you probably took like the model or what have you, kind of figured out, okay, where, how are we going to do this, and then work backward through your production in that, or I guess explain that to me a little bit more, the thought process with the backwards problem solving.
Well, it's more or less like we had to start with what piece we're going to set first, and that was, of course, the furthest pick away from furthest pick away from where the crane is in accordance to where the first piece went. So, of course, we got all the crane information from the general contractor with the tire crane specs and its limits, and incorporated that into the site planning. So like the backwards problem solving is more or less reverse engineer it to make this job more efficient and not just send out a bunch of material all at once and expect, a erector to go through it. So that was more or less like the approach we took in to making this job go very smoothly and hit the schedule.
Very good, very good. So that was kind of some of the problems you had on this particular project. Tell me a little bit about the solutions then that we're here to talk about today, and how those helped you solve those problems that you had on that job site.
Yeah, given like I said, the logistics and our job site constraints, I know that SDS2 released a load planning version a couple of years ago, and I tried it at our old office that we had about 3 years ago when it was released, and just kind of messed around with it. And I mean, there was a lot of potential there to be able to select the pieces that you wanted within the IFC model and virtually load them onto a trailer without having to do trial and error in real life. So knowing that, I of course reached out to Nate, our sales rep here for Cooper, and he, sent over the trial version of it, and I put the trailers together and gave it to my boss, and he was very, receptive to how we were able to get the pieces that we were needing first and put them in to the trailer load, and of course generate the bill of landing. And at that time it was a text file or CSV to convert to submit to our fab shop for the Tekla EPM. But I mean, having all that inputted simultaneously helps our shop's production, and like more or less streamlines the process of getting the material out the door and onto the truck that needs to go first.
Mm-hmm. Very good, very good. So you mentioned the updating Tekla EPM there with the CSV file. So that worked pretty well for you guys. So instead of generating a flat list of assemblies out of EPM like is typically done, give you weights and make sure we fall under the trailer capacity. You're actually kind of doing that, flipping that process on its head and saying, all right, I've got a trailer using the geometry and the weights. Here's my loads. I know what's going to fit, and then we can update Tekla EPM. So we actually just a few days ago released a new version of load planning that has a direct link now to Tekla EPM, so no more export of a file and import. It's a direct link that will update. So that'll be pretty slick here moving forward with that direct link, I think. So
yes, yeah, for sure.
And then SDS2 Site Planning. Give me a little bit. How'd you utilize that and use that as a solution on this project?
Yeah, given, like I said, the GC was providing the tower crane, and we were going to make sure that they sized everything, the crane accordingly to the picks that we had to make. And of course, when this job first started, there was a lot of design changes and a lot of member sizes increased. So helping to identify those on the front end of it really helped. And, with critical lifts and so forth, and it just helped us, to identify any potential hazards there was any, and we could also make changes before the project got started.
Very good, very good. So just a little bit about SDS2 Site Planning for those of you who aren't necessarily aware. We got a screenshot there on the right. That's just a old basic model that I threw together, probably used on a demo a time or two, but we see a crawler crane in there. That dome shape indicates to us the reach on our crane, kind of that reachable area. You've got the rings in there that represent a 10-foot radius. Each one of those is a 10-foot radius to indicate to us, what can be picked and what can be set where. You've even got your cone in the middle there to indicate kind of your inner circle where things couldn't come in because of the crane limitations and that. So it's really intelligent, got a lot of good features on there. Based on that, if you've got a crawler crane like we see on screen there, you can create multiple placements for that crane as you're going to need to move that around your job site. And it'll evaluate that crane and the weight of the assemblies, everything, all your beams, columns, everything to determine whether or not things can be picked and placed. And then it generates all your lift reports. So especially your critical lift reports that you got to have for AISC documentation. It will do that, saves a ton of time doing that. And then, color coding just based on sequence or, what placement the assemblies are going to go with, down to you could even do production status or submittal statuses. You can really get drilled down to the minutia with that color coding and change the color coding on your model to help you determine where things are at. And then putting together work packages, those lift reports, some work packages. We'll see and talk a little bit more about what Michael and Cooper Steel is doing with their work packages here a little bit further on. But, here's an example of the lift reports. So, Michael, you deal with this. You guys are AISC certified, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yes. Here, yeah. But I do know the AISC certification for erectors require a lot of documentation, especially for your critical lifts and that. So here's just a snippet from what SDS2 Site Planning would provide, and sounds like you guys are kind of maybe taking advantage of this or potentially taking advantage of this.
Yes, it just helps us identify any potential problems beforehand instead of doing it the old way of taking it off by hand, identifying the piece marks. Then, of course, with this particular job, we had a lot of beams get upsized more than what they originally started with. So having all that information in real time and updating it as needed helps streamline this so we can get a more accurate count and what we're going to run into going forward. And it also, giving this to our erector helps too, so that way they can look and see what is going to be, that might be a problem, and arrange it accordingly based on where it comes in on the truck and where they need to lay it down to in respect to where it's being picked by the crane to be set in place. So it really helps us.
Okay. Very good, very good. So, yeah, without SDS2 site planning, recording these critical lifts has got to be very time consuming if you don't have a tool that can, do the evaluation of that crane and calculations. You're probably flipping through a lot of PDFs or physical prints to manually find weights and figure out, all the crane reach and all that to determine if that's going to be a critical lift or not. So huge timer saver here on the documentation that we provide here. So this is that university campus project. This is that model with the tower crane that the erector was using. Is that right?
Yes, that's it. And that was all based on the specs that the general contractor gave to me. And of course, I inputted in all that information, and this is what it'll, generate for us. It's not going to be exact, of course, but it gives a good idea on, how it's going to look and what it can reach and so forth.
Very good. Very good. And then this next slide here, I find this one really interesting. I thought this was a good little take on things. So tell me a little bit about this picture here, what we're seeing here on this.
Yeah, this is what I put together in our work package to, give to the general contractor when we do our pre-construction meeting prior to the job starting. And when we're moving from right to left in this case, of course, we had sequence 1 there in green, sequence 2 in light blue, sequence 3 in purple, then the rest of the laydown area for the rest of the sequences was, of course, in orange. And it just shows the laydown area that we had. And I got this overhead shot from the general contractor, and as you can see up there in the top right-hand corner, we have students there in the south lawn still kind of mingling a bit when this job got started. So, but I mean, it just shows that, when we erected sequence 1, where our sequence 1 laydown area could be, and then, we had that space available to offload material and set. And then the same way with sequence 3 and the sequence 2 laydown area. But then, of course, when those first 3 sequences got installed, there was no, we ran out of space, and we just had that little area there in orange to do the rest of the building because we couldn't, leave anything in the street or, for traffic concerns. And like it just shows, I mean, there's not much laydown area at all once this thing gets started.
Yeah, that tiny little sliver left once you get done with sequence 3 there, right? So
and of course we couldn't set anything on the south lawn either. So it just shows the constraints that we faced on this moving forward. So.
And then the work packages. We mentioned kind of the work packages that you're putting together earlier. This is just a cover of one, I believe, right? But give me a little bit of idea of what you're doing with these work packages. What type of information goes in there? What are you providing out of SDS2, either site planning or load planning that goes into these work packages?
Yeah, the biggest thing for us is like it's a presentation that we have with our like GC, like I mentioned before in the pre-construction meetings. We usually try to do that at least 2 weeks prior to the job starting, and it just shows like the flow of how the job's going to go once we get started with the coordination of like sequencing. And we'll see here in the next slide the color coding of it. That way it gives the customer a visual aid to go on how this thing's going to be erected based on the sequence schedule, the planning of loads, that shows like what pieces are going to be on the trucks, when to expect those. And we also put in the load plans that are like with the maps on what elevations they go to. That way the erector can identify what floor elevation that particular load's going to. So it's more or less like a pre-erect, like a playbook. That's a hard copy that the general contractor can see, and also our sub-erectors can see. And that way they have a better understanding of it moving forward. And that eliminates a lot of questions from them. And I mean, they have all the information right there in front of them. And like, we put the like the critical list and everything in there as well to show, the potential hazards, if any.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it.
So I got to imagine, you mentioned the load map goes in there, which we'll see that here in a little bit from SDS2 Load Planning, and putting information there that corresponds to, that load or where those assemblies are going in relation to the building. I got to imagine that's I don't want to say impossible, nothing's impossible, but I got to imagine that would be extremely difficult to coordinate and get right without SDS2 load planning, right? I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
that's really what confirms what's going to be on the trailers. So in order to pre-plan that, you've got to be pretty precise with it, and load planning's kind of what allows you to do that, right?
yes, yeah, it just makes it more efficient and less time shuffling pieces on a real trailer to get it, to get the load not overweight, and also identifies the center of gravity of the trailer to make it safer.
Very good, very good. So then we kind of talked about color coding here a little bit.
Yep.
So this is, I assume, the sequence information, this snippet, probably something you have in that work package there. Yeah. That identifies the sequencing in that.
Yeah, like I said, it's just more of a visual aid to the customer and also to the erector to understand what piece, what sequence and how many, the gist of how many members that we have in that particular section as we go through. And of course, those sequence numbers represent we also put those in like the delivery schedule. So I mean, they know that way, like I said, it's a visual reference to what's coming and when.
Yeah.
And it just, it helps them see it, I feel, in a better perspective versus just having a regular, whole building up there on the screen.
Yeah, for sure.
But, the status display tool helps with that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So that kind of brings us then to SDS2 load planning. So, some of you probably seen SDS2 load planning, have an idea of what it is, what it does. At a high level, what we do is we take the 3D model, and from that 3D model, we can, there's all sorts of information in the IFC files that we use to bring the model information into SDS2 load planning. Weights, the geometry's there, but then we have sequence information and all sorts of other data we can use to really nail down how we want to load our trailers. We use the geometry to ensure everything's going to fit on your trailers, the weight's there, so we make sure that we're going to fall within our trailer capacity. And then all that's used to give us, really enhanced load documentation versus just a flat list that would come from modeling software or Tekla EPM, wherever we've been pulling that information from. And then since we are using the geometry and the weights, we can help eliminate a lot of your revising of the load lists. So those flat lists typically get revised a lot because geometry is not considered. So this is going to eliminate a lot of that revising of those. And then we talked a little bit at the beginning here how we can update the production software also. So in your case, you're using Tekla EPM. We've got that direct link with them now, but we do also update Strumis, and others can be updated as well. The other thing that's great about this, so, as the load is being built in SDS2 load planning, as you're stacking steel on there, it's always calculating the center of gravity of that trailer. So we're going to ensure that this load is balanced, weight is distributed, evenly and whatnot. And then it just provides a safer loading environment. So you can imagine versus trial and error out there in the shop or the yard, if I can do that here sitting in front of a computer, running a mouse, it's a little bit safer than trial and error picking up, heavy steel all the time. And then training. So a lot of companies are using this now when they get new employees or teaching somebody else how to load trailers. Train them virtually, train them on the computer before they actually get out there and touch a piece of steel so that they can visualize how things go together before they ever get out there. And then the other thing, we've talked about this already, not just with load planning, but other areas where we can share this precise information with our other project partners, whether that's the GC, the erector, so everybody knows exactly what's coming on exactly which trailer. And then I've got a lot of fabricators now who love this because they can share this with, say, a galvanizer, for example. So had fabricators bad stories about, sending loads of steel to the galvanizer, comes back, they don't know what's where, or it's just terribly loaded from the galvanizer. So now we can give them this documentation. Here's how it's loaded. They can load it the same way, send it back to us, and now we know exactly where everything's at. Again, eliminates confusion. So high level, kind of run down some of the main points on it there. Couple slides here with that kind of enhanced documentation. So this is the bill of lading that we export for your loads from SDS2 Load Planning. One thing here that you're not going to get with anything else really is this layer column, and it's sorted by layer. So that's the dunnage layer. Okay, so now I can look at this and say, all right, dunnage layer 1, that's what's going to be loaded first. And then, all right, once that's loaded, I need another layer of dunnage, look at my load map, and get that second layer. So anything to add here to that, Michael? Anything I miss on that?
No, I mean, there's nothing. I mean, it's all pretty straightforward with that BLL. I mean, like you said, it shows you where it needs to go.
Very good. Yep. So then that takes us to the load map. Talking about a balanced load. If anybody subcontracts their shipping out, they've probably had problems with the driver showing up and saying, you know what, I don't want to take that load. It's not balanced. With SDS2 load planning, we can see we have the documentation. It calculates that center of gravity, and we can see here we get an elevation and a plan view. So that elevation view is going to give us the center of gravity with some dimensions on it to see that. And then we get that in the plan view as well as the weight distribution below there. So now we've got documentation to prove everything's going right, everything should be balanced, and eliminate some of those problems.
Yes, yep.
And the load map. So this is, just more on the load map, I guess. So one snippet of one dunnage layer. Again, every dunnage layer is going to get a page just like this where we show a plan view of everything loaded on that dunnage layer. We get the isometric view to help us out visualize a little bit. And now guys in the shop, in the yard, are using this to load. We're sharing this with the GC, the erector, the galvanizer, whoever it may be, so everybody's on the same page. Everybody knows exactly what we're getting. This is it's a pretty new process. Nobody's really ever had a tool to help with planning the loads this precise. So it is a new thing to a lot of people, but it really fills a gap in the whole process because we're always planning erection out and how we're going to erect things. We're planning out, we're detailing how to fabricate everything down to every single hole and nut and bolt and everything. And then historically in the past, we've said, all right, now load it on a trailer and no plan. Well, we're planning everything here, we're planning everything here. We've always had this gap with the loading. This fills that gap for planning the loads. So. Anything I miss on the load map stuff, Michael?
No, I mean, all thing that, to mention, especially when you're virtually building these trailers, is like it'll, when you start adding the pieces, it'll show the heights of those pieces. That way you can put them on the same dunnage layer, and that way you're not having multiple sizes of dunnage. And it'll, if there's a conflicting, like with this particular project, we had a lot of extended shear tabs, and with the different member sizes that we had to face, I mean, there was a lot of rotating and getting those to fit on our trailer, and that way, doing it virtually the first time, it saves a lot of effort on our shop's part in loading the steel for these in the staging area. So that's one good feature, is that it'll be green if it's good where it is.
Yeah, very good. That's what
Yeah.
I always say was when I'm showing people, like, you see on screen that things are red or green. So red,
Yep.
bad, green, good. It's
Yep.
simple as that. It's pretty easy for just about anybody to understand. So tell me a little bit about the implementation of load planning for you guys there at Cooper Steel. I know I always get a question, well, David, who's going to use load planning? So again, a tool that nobody's really ever used in the past. So a big question always is, well, great, you have this great tool. Who do I put on it? Who's going to use it? Tell me a little bit about your experience with implementing SDS2 load planning.
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier with this particular project, I mean, it was beneficial for us to use the load planning, given the site constraints that we had, and our on any other jobs that we have, our project managers are required to provide like sequence list or subsequence lists to the shop based on where the area is going to be erected first. So like it's intended to be used by project managers, and it also gives them a kind of better understanding on how these trailers are loaded by messing with it virtually instead of out actually in the yard. So that really helps us, and like it's just beneficial for us to do it. So, and of course, when it shows up in the field, it eliminates looking around to see what load it come in on. That way, when it shows up and the erector has this list of where things are, he knows where to stage it in, even if it's a little lay down area or if you have to pick straight off the truck. They know it beforehand to make this process a lot smoother and a lot simpler for them.
Yeah. So you're project manager for Cooper Steel.
Yes.
Have you been using this yourself also then, in addition to some of your other PMs?
Yes, I've been using this in addition to some of the other guys here and gals that we have in our office.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about the learning curve on it, I guess. What did it take for you to become efficient with load planning?
Yeah, just like anything else, the more you use it, the better understanding you have of it, and knowing how to make the pieces flip, rotate, and so forth. And it probably, once I first started using it for this job, I would say like the first week, I became more efficient in using it, and I probably now load a trailer in 30 minutes.
Well, it's a lot faster than trial and error out there in the yard, right?
Yes, it is.
Probably, sometimes it's going to take you a half an hour to move one piece from here to the next spot where it might fit better. So, good. So 30, that's nothing in the grand scheme of things, really. So, very good. And I think we'll finish up here with a couple slides. This is the topping out of that university campus project. Is that right?
Yes, we had the topping out ceremony last Tuesday, the 14th, and the project schedule was a 12-week erection schedule for this building, and given the constraints that we had with weather and the site, the sub-erector we used for this was very pleased with the, you know, the load list and everything that we sent to them, and they actually finished a week earlier, given in March and April we get a lot of rain here in Tennessee. So that, I mean, it basically, you know, paid for itself on this job.
Yeah, very good, very good. I love to hear the success stories. So, and when our customers are successful, that means we're successful. So I love to hear that stuff. So absolutely. On another slide here, I think one of those looks familiar there. One of those guys.
Yeah, that's me.
There, I believe. Yep.
Yeah, that's me on the right. And then our business unit manager, Greg Cathers, is there on the left. And he actually has a project coming up over here at this campus where he'll be using the load planning software as well, because it's a new building about this size, but it's mostly concrete. But I mean, he's going to have the same problems I ran into with this job, so he'll be using that for his as well.
Very good. So it was a success, and we're going to continue using that on projects. So very good, very good. Very good information. I appreciate it all. And that's kind of what we have for the presentation here today. And just want to give everybody a big thank you. Appreciate everybody's time as always. We will stick around to answer some questions. If you have questions, there's a Q&A panel on here that you can go ahead and type your question in for us to see, and we'll answer those to the best of our ability here. We do have a couple questions here. Not too many, but we'll kind of go here. So one of the questions I see here, Michael, is kind of asking about your pre-construction plan book. You know, I don't want you to give away too many company secrets, but whatever info you can provide on this is great. So the question relating to that is, how early in the process are you providing that pre-book? Are you doing this shortly after model input or after approvals are complete?
Most of the time it's after the approvals are complete, just because there might be design changes within the design phase of it, especially on the design build. And with this particular job, it was a design assist. So we did not do anything until after all the approvals were in.
Very good, very good. Another question here, I might take this one on kind of the functionality of the software, is about the dunnage. So will the dunnage, will it place the dunnage for us if the material is not straight, for instance, bent material? So that's not necessarily something that it's going to do automatically for you today. You know, you kind of got to go in there and build up your dunnage as you see fit on that trailer in order to accommodate some of those bent materials and such. I know you can change the way, you know, any way you want to rotate the material and change the surfaces that it rests on, things like that you can change, but not necessarily going to be an automatic deal at this time. And then here's a question here about training. So how long would it take to train another person to use the load planning program? And I'll give my kind of statement, my opinion on this here, Michael, and then I'll let you chime in on it. So, you know, the load planning software itself is pretty simple to learn the basics. So I always tell people, there's probably about, let's say 15 button clicks that you need to know. Not a ton of button clicks that you need to know. So I think you can have somebody up and running and being dangerous in the software in an hour or so. Now, that's up and running, being efficient. You know, being efficient is a whole nother level. That's going to take a little bit of experience to get really efficient with it. But you can be using it within an hour. What would you say, Michael?
Yeah, I'd say just probably to be efficient with the system itself, probably about a week, 2 weeks at the most, and that's just based on if that person has any type of experience in loading a truck and so forth. So, but yeah, I mean, if someone has that, probably they could fly through a load within 30 minutes, probably within the first week.
Very good. So here's a question about software. So the question is, we're using both Tekla and SDS2. Could we still combine both and use load and site planning? So something to keep in mind about both of these softwares is, so SDS2 Load Planning, we specifically made that a kind of standalone program itself. It's not tied to the SDS2 detailing software. So with load planning, no matter if you're using SDS2 or you're using Tekla, any other software out there, you're going to import an IFC file from that software. That's how we get the 3D model information. That's where we get all the weights and any metadata that you want to use in there to determine how you want to load your loads. So yes, you can use both Tekla and SDS2 and still use SDS2 load planning. Site planning as well. So site planning is more closely tied to the SDS2 detailing software. So with the site planning, if you are using SDS2, you can just open up the native SDS2 model in the site planning. If you're using Tekla, you would have to import an IFC file again into the SDS2 to use the site planning. So yeah, good question. And then, so there's another question here on the site planning and relating to the cranes. So do we incorporate the actual crane data from the crane manufacturers? So we do have a certain set of crane data in there out of the box. And then we also give you the ability to enter all your own crane information in there for the ones that we don't have. And I think, Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding from your guys' process and the kind of building case study we went through here, you actually had to enter your own crane information, correct?
Yes, I had to get all that information from the GC based on the tower crane that they were going to provide to us. And, of course, it included the foundation size and, the height and the length of the boom on it and what the maximum pick was at the very tip of it. And, of course, that was all entered into the site planning tool under the tower crane section, and it was able to get it very close to what we had out there on site.
So here's a question. I'm not sure exactly what we're relating to, but how do you handle revisions to drawings? Can you update info? I know we might need a little bit more clarification on which part we're referring to here, but I do know with SDS2 load planning, we can import and, update the IFC models. So as revisions come through, you export that IFC file from SDS2 or Tekla again, and then on import, we'll update that model and notify you where things have been updated and such. So we do handle it through the import of the new IFC files into load planning that way. So. Do we have any other questions here? Here's one about the load planning, maybe getting a trial on SDS2 load planning. So I would just say if anybody wants to sit down, do a demo, kind of walk through the software itself, I'd be happy to do that for you. You can reach out to me. My email is david@sds2.com. We do also just have a spot on our website to download a free trial of SDS2 Load Planning and kind of take off with it on your own. But yeah, I'd be happy to help anybody out to get a free trial or just do a walkthrough on the demo. So here's a question about, this is going to be a question for you, Michael.
Yeah.
Did you have areas in the shop where you would lay down the completed steel per layer? So were you laying down the steel in certain areas per the dunnage layer and then loading based on that, or what did that look like, you know, when the steel was fabbed in the shop? Once it's fabbed, completed, where does it go? Does it go directly on the trailer? Does it go in another area and then on the trailer? What's that process look for you?
Yeah, down at our shops, we have a staging area too. As this is fabricated, it goes into the staging area, and we have a large tow motor that is able to pick up the entire load and set it on a truck as it's needed for delivery.
Very good. Very good. And looks like our questions have slowed down. I believe that I got to all of them. Again, you know, thanks to everybody. Thank you, Michael, for joining us. Appreciate your time. If anybody does have any additional questions, like I said, my email is david@sds2.com. Be happy to answer any, or if I can't, I'll get you to the right person that can. So, yeah. Thanks for attending, and everybody enjoy the rest of the day.
Yep. Thanks, guys and gals.